Hello and welcome to our second round of 30 days of essential oils. My name is Tammy and I am the aromatherapist alchemist, if you will. I took a little bit of a break over the summertime to get some other things done, and that's the reason for the gap. If you haven't already seen 31 days of essential oils, that took place or was recorded between April and May of this year of 2019. It's always good to go back and review it because each time I do this, it's going to be a different set of oils. And as I did before, I will talk a little bit about the oils here and then follow up with a blog post. Now, I am just now catching up on the first round, so just kind of keep an eye out. And I would actually encourage you to sign up for my newsletter. You can do that. There's a link directly to that in the box below, or you can visit my website, Synergessence.com, and sign up there. But that way you can kind of keep apprised of when I am posting. Even just submit, request to follow the blog on my website, and that way you'll be notified when I do post again. So there's many ways to keep up with this, and like I said, I did take a little bit of a break over the summer, actually quite a bit of a break, and now I'm really excited to be back at it. That said, today I want to talk about Cistus Labdanum. Some of these oils have come in as a request. Other ones I'm putting in because they need to be talked about. And I am, if you're not familiar with me, a big advocate for essential oils. But as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm also an alchemist. I'm an alchemist by nature. Love essential oils, but there's a lot of do's and don'ts with them, and that's what you get when you follow along with me. I'm not going to just sit here and champion them. I'm going to be really honest with you about them and what they're good for and when to avoid using them, most specifically, because there are times that they're not, and that sometimes comes out here in the videos, and other times it actually comes out significantly in the blog piece, because I have more time to sit there and kind of put it all together for you. So like I said, today I wanted to talk about Cistus Labdanum. Historically, I've actually used this with great success in the area of autoimmune disorders. Now, what I've come to determine when through all my research, and that this is for those of you who are new, let me just take a minute to explain or introduce who and what I am as far as how this even comes to you. Been doing this for over 30 years, that is working with oils. I do have a background in pharmacology. I also have extensive work in the area of the study of plant constituents in relation to human health and the epigenome. But again, alchemy comes into this. It's not just, there is scientific evidence to show why it's important to be paying attention to when and how to use the oils, but there's other factors that go into this. And something that I'm actually exclusively doing in my newsletters is actually pairing oils and nutrient-rich foods or nutrient-rich adaptogen herbs, kind of along those lines. So there's a lot of pairing going on. This is alchemy. The next component to alchemy is our mind and our emotions, which is why Cistus Labdanum is really an exceptional oil. It helps to modulate both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, the sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is what helps to keep, peace, if you will, in the system. The sympathetic nervous system, although it is linked to fight or flight, it is on, even at a low level for homeostasis, just to kind of keep everything, checks and balances. And so Cistus really helps to modulate that. And as I mentioned a little while ago, I have used it quite a bit with autoimmune disorders because one of the things that I can bring it all into is that, meaning that stress, inflammation is the bottom line to everything. Now, I'm not trying to say this to be cliche by any stretch of the imagination. Stress is actually a mechanism of action. It's a mechanism of survival, more specifically. And what I mean by that is that when the body is stressed, whether it be mentally, emotionally, environmentally, physically, the epigenome begins to make some switches. I mean, it does it all the time anyway, whether we're stressed or not. I mean, the switches, so to speak, the genetic receptors are activated and deactivated on a pretty regular basis to, again, regulate the chemistry and what it's being used for. And so when this occurs, depending on your unique wiring, it's going to manifest in some kind of health issue when it's chronic, when we're in chronic survival mode. And again, it can be mental and emotional, but it's not just how much we worry and how much we stress over life. It's really about what's impacting us environmentally, which does include physically. And so through this manifestation, elevated levels of environmental estrogens, for example, we have over 70,000 confirmed man-made chemicals that are endocrine disruptors. I hope I said that. Let me rephrase that. We have over 70,000 chemicals confirmed that have been confirmed as endocrine disruptors, and they typically act like estrogen in the body. That does not mean they replace estrogen. It means they act like estrogen. And the significance to that is very simple. Estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone, it is also a primary stress hormone. And what it does is it signals changes in the system to activate oxidative stress, to activate the sympathetic nervous system, to enhance immune function, and so forth. So science has determined that elevated estrogen levels are directly linked to autoimmune disorders. And this is the reason why, and so I was going to say, this is the reason why we have a tendency to see more women with autoimmune disorders, although we are seeing an increase in men. And again, there's a number of chemicals in our environment that are man-made. We also have a lot of nature-made chemicals that act like estrogen in the system, and that's some of what we talk about here in these videos. If you've been following along with these, I just really want to take this moment to thank you. I appreciate all of your input and enthusiasm, absolutely, because it's what brought me back, truthfully, because I had, like I said, got sidetracked and just kind of breathed new life into this for me, so thank you. So that said, with Cistus, it really does help to modulate the way the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems are functioning. It helps to kind of keep us calmer. It maintains that homeostasis, if you will. It's also very good. One of the top components in Cistus is alpha-pinene. Now, which is interesting to me because I just did a couple of blogs, articles on CBD and beta-caryophyllene, which is an atypical cannabinoid found in a number of essential oils. Alpha-pinene is another one. Alpha-pinene is what actually gives the pines their aroma. And Cistus is actually quite high. It's the predominant constituent. The significance to alpha-pinene is, besides being anti-inflammatory, it also has a strong antimicrobial, more specifically antifungal. So it would be very good for yeast, but at the same time, it's also exceptional for MRSA. Now, what's interesting is if you, depending on what website you'll go to, and you look up alpha-pinene, you'll see it listed as a cannabinoid terpene, and it's a predominant terpene in cannabis. Well, that's true, and they will also go on to say that a lot of the, they talk about the synergy of alpha-pinene with other cannabinoid constituents. Keep in mind, pardon me, as I said, alpha-pinene is also found throughout a lot of the essential oils. And so one of the things that I've written about before also is that the primary characteristics of an essential oil are based off of usually the top 2, possibly 3 constituents. The rest of it kind of becomes a synergistic effect. And one of the things that I've been writing about too is when we want to isolate CBD, for example, and say CBD is this like phenomenal compound or cannabinoid, not necessarily. One of the things that we do recognize with alpha-pinene is it has a certain impact on the body, but when combined with other constituents, it's like really profound. CBD believe it or not, takes the same path through the body as beta-carophylline. Beta-carophylline, as I mentioned, is an atypical cannabinoid also found in a number of essential oils, not necessarily cistus. But if you were to pair cistus with another oil that's high in beta-carophylline, such as copaiba, black pepper, helichrysum has some, clove is another good example, and cinnamon bark. If you were to combine it with those, if you didn't have medications to be concerned about, and you diluted it, you could do a world of good as far as helping to modify any kind of autoimmune reactions. It's also very good for, it's a very good stringent for skin. If you've got excessively oily skin, I would recommend it for that. But the antimicrobial benefits are phenomenal. And if you were to take Cistus Labdanum and pair it with something like patchouli, which is another oil we're going to talk about in this series, you would be really, you would be equipped to deal with, there's 3 strains of MRSA that I'm aware of at this point, and even if you did a combination of cistus and geranium and patchouli, you would be able to deal with MRSA. Thyme vulgaris, the white thyme, has historically been very good with MRSA. So those are some options, and like I said, with cistus, it really kind of helps. By the way, it's also known as rock rose, for those of you who've never heard of Cistus Labdanum. Rock rose is another name for it. And so again, anti-inflammatory. Alpha-pinene is an exceptional anti-inflammatory. Depending on the strain that you get, where your batch comes from, sometimes it has camphene in it. Other times it has other constituents in it, and we'll get more into that when we get into the blog. But the predominant thing I would recommend cistus for, truthfully, is for an oversensitized system. Okay, we talked about autoimmune, but even with somebody living with sensory processing disorder, I would even recommend it for autism. Even schizophrenia. I'm going to go out on a limb and say schizophrenia as well. And the reason for that is because it helps to modulate that autonomic nervous system, and the more inner peace a body experiences, the better off the body can regulate the neurochemistry to kind of help. I'm not saying it's the only answer. What I am saying is a very beneficial answer for those concerns. And I'm going to say it's not contraindicated at this point with any type of medication. So that's a really nice. And so if you find yourself, like I said, overly sensitized, if you're hypersensitive to smell, sound, you don't have to have this diagnosis. Please know that, okay? You do not have to have this diagnosis. You can even have histamine intolerance. This would be another good reason to include cistus. Now, I'm making all of these generalized suggestions, and it's very, very important for you to remember to start small. Start with a little bit of it and see how your system does. Because just because I'm suggesting it doesn't make it right for your system. It's just, these are just kind of generalized statements, and it's a great place to begin. It is I would also, one of the other good uses for it is for internal bleeding. It's very good for wound care, but also internal bleeding. Now, that said, if you paired that with helichrysum and if you do have some internal bleeding going on, the best way to get this in, I know there's a lot of people out there that will tell you to ingest it. The best way for you to get this internally rapidly is to sit in a bathtub with it. Okay, so put maybe, if you do have internal bleeding, 10 drops of cistus, 10 drops of helichrysum, and plant your bottom in the bathtub and sit there for 15 to 20 minutes. You have to do it two times a day. But that's the best way to get it internally to help reduce, if not stop, that internal bleeding. Okay, so those would be but I'm veering more towards, we have such an increase these days in hypersensitivity, period, that I would really recommend cistus for anybody along those lines. Like I said, maybe it's histamine, maybe it is, like I said, sound, light, smell. I mean, believe it or not, smell. I mean, if you're hypersensitive to smell, that would be kind of that'd be a test. But at that rate, I would at least put it on your feet. Put it between your toes and see how that helps to soothe your system. Again, always pairing these oils with something else really provides a synergistic value that you won't get with a single oil. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any questions. And until then, until tomorrow, I am looking forward to seeing you then. Yeah, tomorrow we're going to be talking about Palo Santo. All right, take care.